JP, next slide. And yeah, so go ahead and save questions for the end. We can go to the next one there, JP. Okay, so some benefits to being in the directory. We do try to do lots of advertising for you. So the primary resource is through the website. So those of you who have been in the directory in the past, you know that you've worked with JP on creating your kind of profile on our website. And so for the new folks, you'll be doing that as well. That way people can be linked through our directory to information about your business. We also mention the directory during each of our site visits, and we're doing about 1,400 site visits per year right now. We link to your directory, to the directory and all of our site reports as well. So each of those 1,400 participants gets a site report and it has a link for the directory. And then we call it out in each of our quarterly newsletters as well. So this is our way of trying to connect our backyard habitat participants with your businesses. And the way we see it is that if you're interested in being our director, you probably share a lot of the values that we talk about with program participants, and therefore you have like similar ideals in mind, like cutting down on pesticides and herbicides, gardening for wildlife, those types of things. And we feel that really creates a sense of community of like we're all working together towards healthier ecosystems. Okay, JP, next slide. Okay, and so in the past, when we've had these annual trainings, we've really focused on kind of the program and the specifics of the program so that you all would know kind of what customers who are in our program would be expecting and kind of like what their goals would be and things like that. And but we have so many folks that are in this year after year that we started a couple of years ago, we started focusing more on considering this kind of like an additional education or like, yeah, just kind of like an educational opportunity. So we started bringing in speakers, and that's why we have our guest speakers today. And so for those of you who are new this year, that's why it's so critical to watch our recording from our 2020 training, because that was a year that we did like the full breakdown of the program and really go into training about that. And so that's a really critical thing to watch before we add your business to the directory in January. So please do make sure to watch that. And if you have any questions or haven't received that, please reach out to JP and he can get you set up with that. And then for returning businesses, we do always recommend that you watch that too. I know that's another 2-hour session. So, and maybe you've been joining this for many years, but it's always a good refresh just to kind of understand how we talk about native plants. There's some kind of tricky things that come up that we hear about from participants who are working with businesses in our directory, things like cultivars and how sometimes businesses can plant a lot of those, and those won't help the participant get certified. So that can kind of lead to some confusion and potential frustration, as well as herbicide use and pesticide use can be a point of kind of confusion. So at the very least, you could kind of hop through there and pick and choose things that you think would be good to refresh yourself on. So. And then do feel free to email me about topics that you'll be interested in hearing about in the future. I'm the point person for bringing in guest speakers. And or if you have a particular speaker you've heard and you're like, hey, this group was excellent, let me know and we can see what we can do to add them in a future year. Okay, JP, next slide. Okay, so like I said, our guest speaker today is the Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides. Okay, JP, next slide. We've got three presenters today. We've got Sherilyn Peterson, who is the Healthy Wildlife and Water Program Manager. They're the point person at NCAP for things related to water, wildlife, and ecosystems, scientific questions, their consultation services, and providing presentations. So Sherilyn, who I've been calling Shay, so Shay, I hope that's okay, just call you Shay here, joined NCAP in 2020, has a master's degree in forestry from Northern Arizona University, focusing on forest. All right, got a fellow student from the old days. I love it. Focusing on forest health and a BS degree in commercial photography and anthropology. Has worked for state and federal agencies, universities, nonprofits, and has advocated for wildlife habitat and sustainable land management. And next, our other speaker is Tommy Alvarez, who is their Healthy People and Communities Program Manager. He's a good contact for things related to farm workers, workplace issues, community issues, Spanish language programming. And he joined NCAP in 2022 as the Healthy People and Communities Program Manager, studied journalism in his native Santiago, Chile, and moved to the US in 2017 and has lived on organic farms in Colorado, also worked for nonprofits, volunteered at farmers markets, and has a passion for organic growing practices and community building around local food systems. Also plays the cello, which I did not know, Tommy. That was really fun to read about in your bio. And then last but not least, we've got Annalisa Wilson, who is the program specialist and equity, healthy communities and environment specialist. Born and raised in Ciudad Obregón, Sonora, Mexico. Grew up in a large family, learned from her parents the important values that play a vital role in her work, such as integral service for rural communities in need and Hispanic migrant workers. Has been a certified instructor for health and chronic disease programs from Stanford University, and a mental health promoter, has run educational, environmental, and COVID-19 workshops, and is passionate about crossing the language barrier to provide useful education to Hispanic families in Oregon and Washington. So big kudos to the three of you for joining us. Annalisa was going to be our interpreter. They really helped us promote this training to the large group of Latino landscapers that they work with. So we were hoping to have a few of them join today, and Annalisa was going to translate, and we haven't had luck. So I think we've got more work to do reaching that community. But definitely thank you three for being here. Okay, JP. And then I think that takes us to our presentation with NCAP. So Shay, I think, or Tommy, whichever is starting, I think you should be able to share your screen now and give your presentation. Let me know if you have any problems.
Should be able to. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Perfect.
Great.
Let me know if you're seeing this.
Yes, we can see the presentation. It's in kind
Wonderful.
of, there you go. Yeah, that looks great.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thanks for generating these kinds of spaces, Backyard Habitat Certification Program. My name is Tomi Diaz, or Tomas Diaz, and well, I guess Susie already gave us a pretty hefty presentation. Very excited to be here, along with my colleagues Shay and Annalisa, and I guess we can just get started with our little talk about healthy habitats, sustainable landscaping for ecosystem wellness. First, I'll give a little description of who we are. We are the Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides, or NCAP. We are a small nonprofit that works to protect community and the environment against chemical pesticides and inspire ecological solutions. And we are probably 9 or 10 staff members at NCAP. We're a very small organization, mostly women-led. And as of 4 years now, we've been diversifying our staff, which has helped increase our reach for the bilingual programs, which I'll get in a second here. Our mission is to protect community and environmental health and inspire ecological solutions to reduce the use of pesticides. Um, we mostly organize educational sessions, workshops, outreach, along with community partners, different direct service on the ground organizations that work directly with folks that need our help and assistance. Our bilingual programs are generally managed by Sherilyn, Annalisa, and me. We've been focusing our work in the states of Oregon, Washington, and hoping to expand the bilingual programs to Idaho when funding is presented and available. But yeah, we work in two main programs. With the bilingual programs, we have the Latinx Landscaper Network, which we're going to be changing to Latino Landscaper Network. We've had very long discussions about using the term Latinx. That's a different conversation. And the other program we have is the Farm Worker Education Project. This one works with farm workers, farm worker families, rural Latino families, Hispanic families in Central and Eastern Oregon counties, and the Landscaper Network mainly focuses around the Portland metro area. We work with landscapers, nursery goers, and Latinos that are trying to grow a garden in their houses too. And well, this is just going into the thick of the conversation. We can start talking about landscaping choices as ecosystem interventions. We know that landscaping choices go beyond aesthetics and functions, and they works as interventions that impact our local ecosystems. This means that our gardens, our yards, our landscapes are not separate from the natural world. They're a part of it, and many times there is a big mix of what happens in here goes out there, and what happens out there goes in here. And we'll be talking a little more in depth about the interconnectedness of the natural world and the gardens that we manage, the things we put in our gardens. So it should be very exciting. Let's talk about ecological landscaping. It is an approach that emphasizes an understanding of the environmental consequences of plant choices and management procedures used in creating a landscape. The goal is to create an ecosystem that enhances the surrounding environment for all the critters. So what this means, it's a landscaping approach that is more holistic and considers how different aspects and variables affect the environment. We're talking about concepts like the use of native plants, the avoidance of invasive species, water conservation, understanding the environment around us, our surroundings, and waste reduction as well as natural predators, beneficial insects. This approach to landscaping promotes balance, a self-sufficient system that is cyclic in nature and is part of the natural environments around it as well. And it also tries to address concerns like habitat loss. That's so very common these days. Water pollution, which we also fight a lot against, and climate change. All these issues that we usually deal with at NCAP, and try to address within our target audiences. Um, yeah, let's move on. Uh-oh. There we go. Yeah, so uh, interconnected services, local environments as networks. Um, like I was saying, our natural world is a big network of interconnectedness. I like the use of the term critters to just refer to all kinds of life, carbon-based life, whether that's human or non-human. Um, and it's a big network where different life forms interact to preserve a natural, balanced ecosystem. Um, the benefits that we get from the interaction with the natural world we call ecosystem services. And these are many benefits that we get from these interactions, like um, material outputs from ecosystems such as food, water, fiber, fresh air, um, regulating services like regulating climate, air quality, soil quality. These are a few examples of ecosystem services. Um, so, for example, we have also cultural services like non-material benefits that happen from these ecosystem services, like opportunities for recreation, tourism, and aesthetic appreciation. But all in all, interconnectedness of these local landscapes with larger environmental systems are what we're trying to refer to here as the networking that goes on between the bigger picture and our tiny little gardens or landscapes that we manage. Um, and we also have the concept of microhabitat. A microhabitat is a very small scale environment. Um, it's a very small scale environment that supports tiny animals, tiny plants. For instance, we have a rock pool or a rotting log. Um, like, for instance, a space underneath a rotting log provides a distinct environment for insects and fungi and other organisms. Like it provides a different moisture environment and temperature. So that's what we understand as a microhabitat. Um, for instance, the role of microhabitats, like a garden bed or a green roof or a tree hollow, or an oasis in the desert, apparently. These support broader ecological functions such as rainwater filtration, carbon sequestration, and a habitat for beneficial organisms like pollinators. Again, whoops. Okay, now we're moving to our second topic, which is soil health essentials. We understand the soil as a living system, a living organism um, that has many different components to to make it healthy. Um, we see soil as this mass that has taken thousands of years to form. It's broken down into different layers, different profiles, and healthy soil or soil health is the ability of soil to function as this living ecosystem. It supports plant life and animal life and acts as a filter for water and for pollutants as well. We have different layers of the soil, as I was mentioning. These layers will make soil healthy or not. They're not the only variables here, but they have different purposes. They have different tasks and roles, and they're also called horizons. this sequence of layers, and the three main layers are the topsoil, the subsoil, and the bedrock or parent rock. As far as I'm concerned, from what I studied, parent rock and bedrock are fairly similar. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an expert. But anyway, let's keep going. So let's go through these layers. Let's talk about the topsoil first. It's also called the humus layer. It's rich in organic material. It consists of decomposed material and organic matter, and it's the reason why topsoil has this dark brown color. It has a very particular smell. Um, the humus makes the topsoil soft, porous to hold enough air and water. And this is the layer where we have seeds germinating and we have roots of plants growing. And we have a lot of organic matter and we have living organisms like earthworms, millipedes, centipedes, etc. Then we have the subsoil. It goes just below the topsoil, and it's comparatively harder and more compact than how breathable the topsoil is. It's lighter in color because there is less humus in this layer. It's less organic, but it's rich in minerals that are broken down from the topsoil. It contains metals, salts, especially iron oxide, um, and it's the one that comes right before the bedrock or parent rock. We're going to call it bedrock. Horizon C. The bedrock is also known as a parent rock, like I just said, and it's right below the subsoil. It contains no organic matter, and it's made up of stones and rocks, so it's very hard. This layer represents a transition zone between the Earth's bedrock and the first two layers of soil. Um, so these different layers interact to create a healthy soil that is carbon rich, and it's when healthy soil is critical in mitigating climate change by storing carbon, helping to reduce greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So we have a lot of good things at carbon rich soil, um, and it's also resilient to weathering and the climate change. And like we said, it's a living system. It's an organism that has cycles and it's biologically active, um, and it produces beautiful life. And now we go over to chemical contamination and the soil microbiome. So the soil microbiome is a diverse community of bacteria, fungi, and other microorganisms that help decompose organic matter, fix nitrogen, and support soil health. Um, So we talk about the use of chemical pesticides as a form of pest control or herbicides and or fertilizers, and this use of chemicals destroys the cycle, destroys the relationship between the critters and the plants, and it breaks down the balance that the soil has along with its network of different organisms, producing dire consequences of contamination like reduced biodiversity, reduced fertility of the soils. There's a disruption of the nutrient cycling, and of course, a reduced soil health as a consequence of that. The soil becomes less resilient, and it becomes more fragile. The ecosystem in general becomes more fragile and more dependent on these chemicals. Um, and there's also the fact that these chemicals, the pesticides, the herbicides, persist in the soil. They stay way after application. They stay in the soil. There's runoff, and they get in our waterways. There can be contamination, and they can be consumed by different animals or pets. So there's a lot of different consequences that can happen because of the use of these chemicals that kill beneficial microorganisms, making the soil more prone to erosion, and just creating an imbalance in the ecosystem. Um, and we have a picture here of Roundup, one of the most commonly used herbicides in the US. This is has the infamous glyphosate uh, component, and well, needless to say that this is the most, like I said, the most used herbicide in the US. It's been banned in many places like Europe and Canada. Different states or municipalities, cities are doing their own work to ban the use of Roundup because of all the problems it's generated. It's caused or allegedly caused lots of cancer cases, and it just destroys, like I said, destroys the soil health and the balance in the ecosystem. It's been shown to reduce the population of earthworms, disrupt the soil's nitrogen fixing capabilities, and it's leading to long-term consequences for soil fertility. Um, so that one's a huge no-no. Then we have the pesticide resistance mechanisms. Um, so we know that pest resistance is when we have repeated pesticide use, and this produces uh, that the pests that are exposed to these chemicals adapt over time and develop resistance, which in turn ends up requiring more potent chemicals, more applications, and weakening the soil further and further. Um, there's the term of resistance cycles, um, which means this is the process by which the pests develop the ability to survive and reproduce after exposure to pesticides that would normally be lethal. So, with each pesticide application, these critters are more and more resistant, and over the years, the proportion of the population that can survive these pesticides increase until the pesticide is simply just ineffective, and we have to resort to stronger and more intense chemicals in a more higher concentration as well. So for that, well, also needless to say that the contamination of pesticides happens a lot of times affecting non-target species, which also makes it terrible for the ecosystem. It affects, like I said, the earthworms and the critters on in the soil, but it also affects pollinators and aquatic organisms, um, and it just ends up being a vicious cycle that grows and grows until we don't know yet, but we haven't seen it. But it looks pretty bad for now. We have integrated pest management, or IPM, that we want to introduce here. It's a strategy to reduce the reliance on chemical pesticides by promoting things like biological control, crop rotation, and resistant plant varieties. Um, this is a science-based approach to managing pests, and it also involves different activities like changing cultural practices, using resistant plant varieties, and very judicious use of pesticides. It's um, it's important to note that a pesticide in itself isn't the concept of a pesticide isn't necessarily a bad thing. We have many things in the natural world that we use as pest control, and that could also be defined as a pesticide. What brings the problems is the use of these chemicals that attack um, very mindlessly the balance and the soil health, and that's what we're trying to avoid here. That's why we also refer, and Shay's going to explain it later, we refer to um, least toxic pesticide alternatives instead of non-toxic pesticide alternatives. But yeah, IPM is an environmentally friendly approach, can be used in many settings, in agriculture, forests, parks, wildlife refuges, homes and gardens, and workplaces. Um, and that's what we're trying to promote here with IPM. So we have the impact on soil friability, which is the soil's ability to be easily crumbled and, allowing roots to grow and water to penetrate. It's also it has to do with the breathability. And we have seen, studies have shown, and experiences have shown how the long-term use of chemicals, especially herbicides and fertilizers, lead to soil compaction, sorry, reducing its aeration and the ability to hold water. Um, and these these impacts plant health and increases the need for irrigation, increases the need for chemical inputs, creating a vicious cycle that further degrades the soil quality, as we have already been talking about. Um, and now we just have to imagine, and I'm sure you all are aware of this, that this has been happening in the US for decades, where tons of chemicals have degraded our soils, producing less nutritious crops and producing a food system that is weak and that is very fragile, which is a problem that we're not going to try to tackle today. So we're moving on. Let's talk about beneficial insects instead. Um, Real quick, beneficial insects, well, insects a lot of times get labeled as pests when they become a problem to people, but there's insect species um, that are actually helpful to us by keeping actual pests in check. Um, so we have different beneficial insects that, like, such as pollinators, bees, and butterflies and hummingbirds, and we have soil aerators, earthworms, for instance, and we have natural pest controllers like ladybugs or predatory beetles, which play vital roles in maintaining soil structure and fertility. So there is a natural interconnectedness of soil and insect health. So like such as how healthy soil supports healthy plant growth, which in turn provides habitat and food for beneficial insects. This is a cyclic nature of a healthy ecosystem. Um, and The impact of pesticide use not only kills these insects, but destroys the balance, and it destroys the ecosystem that has been created between these insects and the soil. That's why pesticide-free zones are so important to encourage biodiversity, um, and also to raise awareness around the population. Now we move on to native plants. I think this is my colleague's turn. Shay.
All right, so looking at native plants as ecosystem solutions. So to begin, let's explore the concept of native plants and why they're uniquely suited to solving many of the challenges we face in our landscapes and ecosystems. So looking at why native plants are such valuable contributors to our local ecosystems. First, native plants are uniquely suited to thrive in their local environments because they've evolved alongside our specific climate, soils, and weather patterns over thousands of years. In Oregon, for example, native species have adapted to our wet winters and our dry summers, meaning they could often survive and thrive with minimal watering or intervention. Oops. This makes them more resilient to drought, pests, and diseases compared to many native plant or non-native plants. But the benefits of native plants go beyond their resilience. They play a crucial role in supporting our local ecosystems. So native plants provide food and shelter for a wide range of wildlife. This includes everything from birds, pollinators like bees and butterflies, and small mammals as well. For instance, their flowers, berries, and seeds are often perfectly timed to meet the needs of local species during critical parts of their life cycles. Another key benefit is water conservation. So native plants tend to require less irrigation because they're accustomed to local rainfall patterns. This is especially important in regions where water resources are limited or where we're looking to reduce our environmental impact. Now, what are some great examples of native plants that thrive right here in Oregon? So we have some photos here. So we have the red flowering currant. This shrub produces vibrant red blooms that attract hummingbirds and pollinators. It's drought tolerant and thrives in a variety of soil types. In the middle, we have Oregon grape. As our state flower, the Oregon grape is not only beautiful, but also incredibly hardy. Its bright yellow flowers provide nectar for pollinators, and its blueberries are a food source for birds. And the last one we have is Douglas fir. So a towering native tree that's a cornerstone of Oregon's forests. It provides habitat for birds and small mammals, stabilizes soils, and contributes to clean air. By incorporating plants like these into your landscapes, you're not just reducing maintenance and water use, you're actively supporting native Oregon wildlife and contributing to healthier ecosystems. So whether you're designing a garden or restoring a natural area, remember that native plants aren't just a choice, they're an investment in the health of the environment. Next slide. All right, so reducing chemical dependency. So native plants are remarkable for their ability to thrive in the environments they've called home for thousands of years. Because they've adapted to local conditions, like soil types, rainfall patterns, and climate, they naturally require less intervention from us, especially when it comes to watering and fertilizing, which is good. When planted in the right conditions, native plants almost take care of themselves. One of the biggest advantages of incorporating native plants into your landscape is their ability to reduce reliance on chemical pesticides, including fertilizers, herbicides, anything that's under the label of a pesticide. Unlike many non-native plants, which often struggle to survive without constant support, native plants are inherently resilient. They've evolved alongside local pests and diseases, often developing their own defenses, which means they don't really rely on chemicals to keep them healthy. Another fantastic benefit is the diversity of native plants available to meet specific landscaping needs. So for example, if you want a drought-tolerant plant, those are perfect for areas with limited water access, which can help you conserve your precious resource. Shade-loving plants thrive under trees or in lower light, adding greenery and beauty to spaces that might otherwise go unused. And then low maintenance options require minimal care, making them ideal for busy gardeners or those seeking sustainable solutions. And as an added bonus, native plants are magnets for beneficial insects, as Tommy was talking about earlier. They attract pollinators like bees and butterflies, as well as natural pest predators like ladybugs. This helps create a balanced, thriving ecosystem right in your own backyard, one where biodiversity is supported and chemical interventions become unnecessary. By choosing native plants, we're not just enhancing our landscape, but we're partnering with nature to create beautiful, functional, and sustainable environments. It's a simple choice with lasting benefits for both our gardens and the planet. Next slide. So native plants play a vital role in supporting local wildlife. They provide food, shelter, nesting sites, creating a thriving habitat for everything from pollinators, bees and butterflies, to birds, small mammals, and even amphibians. However, the impact of habitat fragmentation poses a significant challenge to wildlife. So habitat fragmentation occurs when large areas of habitat are broken into smaller unconnected parts. While some fragmentation can occur naturally, like from storms or wildfires, is most often a result of human activity, such as urban development, road construction, or agriculture. This isolation disrupts the movement and survival of wildlife, making it harder for species to find food, mates, and safe places to live. This is where wildlife corridors come to play. So the wildlife corridor is a designated strip of undeveloped land that connects fragmented habitats, allowing animals to move freely between them. You might wonder, Why do wildlife corridors matter in something as small as a backyard habitat? Well, the truth is, even our individual outdoor spaces play a crucial role in supporting local biodiversity and connecting fragmented ecosystems. Let's think about it. In urban and suburban areas, natural habitats are often separated by roads, buildings, and other human developments. This creates isolated islands of habitat, which can make it difficult for wildlife to move safely and find the resources they need. A backyard design with native plants and thoughtful landscaping can act as a stepping stone, helping animals move between larger green spaces. Here's why this matters. So the backyard habitat with native plants provides food, water, and shelter, which can help small creatures, like we were saying, navigate through their urban environment. So for species that migrate, such as butterflies or birds, a backyard can become a safe resting spot on their journey. So even in small wildlife corridors enable animals to find new mates and avoid the negative impacts of inbreeding. By creating connected green spaces, we can offset the effects of habitat fragmentation caused by urban sprawl. For example, planting pollinator-friendly native flowers in your yard not only attracts bees and butterflies, but it also helps them move between fragmented wildflower patches. Similarly, shrubs and trees can provide perching spots and cover for birds as they travel across neighborhoods. The idea is simple. When many people create wildlife-friendly spaces in their backyards, these individual efforts combine to form a larger network of connected habitats. Together, we can build wildlife corridors that help preserve biodiversity, even in the heart of a city or suburb. Next slide. So now we'll look at riparian zone plant importance. So riparian zones are incredibly valuable ecosystems that are often overlooked. These are the areas of land bordering bodies of water, like rivers, lakes, or streams. They're defined by a unique vegetation, soil type, and proximity to water. In fact, the word riparian comes from the Latin word ripa, meaning riverbank. So why does this matter? Even in a backyard setting, the principles of riparian zone restoration can have a big impact. Water quality improvement. So if your yard includes or is near a small stream, pond, or wetland, native plants in these areas act as natural filters. They help keep runoff from rain or irrigation containing fertilizers, pesticides, and other chemicals from entering water bodies and harming aquatic life. So erosion prevention, backyard water features or properties adjacent to natural waterways can experience soil erosion over time. So native plants help stabilize the banks with their roots, preventing the loss of valuable soil and protecting the structural integrity of the landscape. They also provide wildlife habitat. So as we were saying, they can create essential habitat. Having overhanging vegetation provides shade for aquatic species, while shrubs offer nesting spots for birds and insects. So the last part is stormwater management. So a well-vegetated riparian zone can act as a sponge, absorbing excess rainwater and reducing flooding in your yard. So this natural water management reduces the burden on storm drains and prevents water pooling in low-lying areas, creating diversity hotspots. So adding riparian plants to your backyard supports a greater diversity of species by connecting your yard to surrounding natural areas. So these mini wildlife corridors allow creatures to move safely between habitats, even in fragmented suburban landscapes. Not only does it do all those things, but it also has aesthetic and functional benefits. So riparian zones with native plants can enhance the beauty of your yard while reducing maintenance. Native plants require less watering and fertilizing as they're establishing, making them a low maintenance way to support your landscape and local ecosystem. So everything I said, in short, integrating riparian principles into a backyard habitat helps turn your property into an ecological asset. It's a small step that contributes to clean water, healthier soil, and a thriving environment for both people and wildlife. Native plants are key to creating these corridors by planting native species in urban and suburban landscapes. We can form stepping stones between larger habitats and help species like pollinators, birds, and small mammals navigate through their fragmented landscapes. So how are wildlife corridors essential for preserving biodiversity? Simply put, they bridge the gaps that human activity creates. So they ensure wildlife can thrive, ecosystems can remain resilient, and we can protect the delicate balance of nature that sustains us all. Next slide. So now we will get into chemical safety and alternatives, which is NCAP's wheelhouse. This is what we generally do. So looking at neonicotinoids and ecosystem impacts. So let's shift gears and let's discuss chemical impacts, starting with neonicotinoids. So what is a neonicotinoid? These are systemic insecticides that are absorbed by plants, making the entire plant toxic to pests. Unfortunately, this toxicity also extends to pollinators like bees. So neonicotinoids have been linked to colony collapse disorder, where entire bee colonies disappear. They also persist in soil and water, affecting birds, fish, and other wildlife. So what can we do? We can avoid products with neonicotinoids and look for alternatives labeled as pollinator safe. You can support local nurseries that prioritize this. So native pesticide-free plants is another impactful step. So next. All right, so you guys might know all of this, but it's a nice refresher. So looking at NPK nutrient management, so that being nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, looking at the ratios of that. So let's see, overusing fertilizers leads to runoff that pollutes waterways, causing algal blooms that harm aquatic ecosystems. So what is the solution to this? So soil testing is the solution. So it's an easy way to determine exactly what nutrients your soil needs so that you can apply fertilizers precisely and sparingly. So for example, if your soil is nitrogen rich, you can focus on phosphorus heavy fertilizers to promote root development. Next slide. All right, so Tommy alluded to this earlier. We're talking about least toxic pest management approaches. So this is in relation to integrated pest management, or IPM. So that's a holistic method for managing pests with minimal chemical use. So IPM emphasizes prevention first. They start with a healthy soil. Healthy plants are naturally more resistant to pests. Introduce natural predators. For example, ladybugs, or for aphids, or predatory nematodes for soil pests. You can use organic pesticides as a last resort. Generally, when we say least toxic, even if it's organic, it's toxic for something. So it's safer, yes, but it definitely has its problems too. So we suggest folks could use even more natural things like neem oil, diatomaceous earth, which helps target pests without harming beneficial species. And the reason why we say it's least toxic, because even if you're being super careful and spraying it, very targeted, you could still eventually maybe spray onto a spot that has like beneficial insects, like something will be harmed by that. So next slide. All right, so we talked about a lot of stuff, but the next is water quality considerations. So as we care for our yards and gardens, it's crucial to consider how our actions impact water quality. So one of the most significant concerns is chemical runoff from fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides that wash away during rain or irrigation. These chemicals don't just disappear. They enter storm drains and eventually flow into our local waterways, where they can harm aquatic life and disrupt ecosystems. Thankfully, there are best practices we can follow to minimize these impacts and protect water quality. So let's explore some of these techniques. So we have rain gardens, which are shallow planted depressions in your yard designed to capture and absorb rainwater. They're often filled with native plants, which thrive in both wet and dry conditions. So these gardens slow down the flow of water, allowing it to soak into the ground naturally. They also filter out pollutants, keeping chemicals out of nearby streams or rivers. There's also permeable paving, which you may or may not have in your gardens. These are traditional concrete and asphalt surfaces, which are impermeable, causing water to run off quickly and carry pollutants with it. Also, other permeable paving materials like gravel, porous concrete, or pavers with gaps allow rainwater to seep into the ground. So this will reduce runoff and replenish groundwater, making it a more sustainable option for driveways, patios, walkways, maybe within your garden setting. Swales are another option. So swales are shallow, vegetated channels that guide rainwater across the landscape, often toward rain gardens or retention areas. So unlike traditional gutters, like we would see like on a house or something like that, swales slow down water flow, allowing time for it to infiltrate the soil. So you can also use native grasses or plants to line the swale, and this also helps trap sediment and pollutants, further improving water quality. So by implementing these practices, we can significantly reduce the amount of harmful chemicals that are entering our waterways. At the same time, we're creating a healthier, more sustainable landscape that benefits both people and wildlife. So remember that every small change we make to manage stormwater, we can contribute to cleaner rivers, lakes, and oceans, ensuring a healthy environment for future generations. Next slide. So we just wanted to share a resource with you guys. It's at www.growsmart.growsafe.org. And this is one of the most significant steps we could take toward more sustainable landscaping is selecting safer products and practices for pest management. So this option, this resource is a program that was started years ago, and it becomes an invaluable resource. It's a comprehensive guide that helps homeowners, gardeners, and landscapers identify alternatives to harmful chemicals and adopt sustainable practices. So whether you're looking for an eco-friendly pest control product, a non-toxic herbicide, or natural ways to boost soil health, the Grow Smart, Grow Safe has you covered. The platform provides detailed information on the safety and environmental impact of various landscaping products, alternatives to synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, methods to manage weeds, pests, and disease with minimal environmental harm. So for example, instead of using chemical pesticides, you might consider natural pest control methods like beneficial insects, or neem oil or diatomaceous earth or any of those others that I mentioned. When it comes to weeds, manual weeding, mulching, or even using native ground cover can help reduce reliance on herbicides while supporting biodiversity. So I have a question to ask you all. So what alternatives to harmful chemicals are you most interested in exploring? And are there specific pest or weed problems in your garden that you'd like more sustainable solutions for? The more we tailor these practices to our individual needs, the greater the impact we can have on our landscapes, our communities, and the environment. So let's grow smarter and safer together. Next slide. So let's connect. We're here to support your journey towards healthier, more sustainable practices for your landscape, home, and community. If you have any questions, need additional resources, or would like guidance on implementing what we've discussed today, please don't hesitate to reach out to any of us. This is our team at NCAP. Each of us brings unique expertise to help address your concerns from community health and wildlife preservation to equity and sustainable practices. We value your input and look forward to collaborating with you on creating healthier pesticide-free environments. Please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or ideas, and we're excited to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tommy and Shay. That was excellent. I feel like there's so much cross-pollination between our programs and what the information that we share out. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming and sharing all the different topics that you cover in your programming. So folks, this is a great opportunity to ask questions to the NCAP crew here. And so please go ahead and put them in the chat box if you have them. There are a couple here that I'm going to try to capture and make note of. Let's see. The first question that came up kind of near the beginning of the presentation was whether it sounds like a couple of folks have heard that Roundup is shifting away from including glyphosate as an ingredient and are starting to sell non-glyphosate product. It sounds like maybe it has the same name of Roundup. Is that something that either of you have heard anything about?
Yes, and that makes me think that I haven't actually seen the label, but I've been talking to people about it, and I think it might even be more toxic. But I don't know that for sure. just because I don't know exactly what the new formulation is. So I can't speak. They are changing it, yes. And I have seen like there's a whole new like they changed the label and everything on the bottle. But yeah, I can't say for sure that it's, but like Tommy was saying, there's even like some of the municipalities. So where I'm working at in Seattle, they basically did like a ban in certain parts of the city. This was way back, like I would say in the early 2000s or so. But yeah, I can't fully speak to what if it's going to be as toxic, but I just have a feeling like, and maybe that's like a bad thing for me to be thinking, but yeah, more to come as we kind of see how that shifts. But yeah, they've been talking about changing that formulation for some time. But I don't know, like I said, I haven't seen the actual chemical, so maybe once I know that, do it more. But yeah, I have doubts about that. So, Tommy, did you have anything to say about that?
No, not really. I was just trying to read a little more about it. But I was looking at the comments and questions in the chat. I wonder we have time to try to address them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you sure do. Yeah, I think you have, like, I'd say up to 10 minutes.
Perfect. Got kind of lost here. Hold on. So lots of good comments. I know we're mostly preaching to the choir here, but really happy to look at all the comments here about native species and don't buy ladybugs comments. Really enjoying those. There's a question about vinegar in general and as a moss killer. Um, what I know is that it is used as a mild pesticide a lot of times. It's like a short-term kind of solution. It, it can repel different pests, mosquitoes, fruit flies. But it is a short-term, known as a short-term pesticide and probably not good for like large-scale pest infestations. Um, yeah, Shay, I wanted to give you the space in case you know more about vinegar.
Yeah, and just, I mean, I think probably most of you that use it, it's industrial vinegar, so it's usually 20% or higher. It's not just like something you could go buy in your grocery store. And usually people will dilute it to about 10 to 15%. Um, and yeah, it's kind of like yeah, it is short term. It works on, multiple things. So I saw there's a comment here where folks were using it on the resprouts on blackberries, which is that's great because blackberry is really generally hard to control, as most of you know. So yeah, it's like a good way to kind of keep it down to the point where you can go in and not like manually remove it. But yeah, I think it's a great tool. You also want to be very careful with the industrial vinegar, be very targeted in your spraying. As I was saying, it is considered at least toxic. So it is toxic to some things like beneficial insects. And yeah, just I don't know exactly what it does to the soil over time. Probably will maybe start to cause a little bit of a problem, but I don't know that for sure. So I don't want to speak too much about that. But yeah, it is a good tool to kind of, keep things manageable while you're trying to like manually remove things. Let's see.
And
what
someone
else?
kind of within that, Shay, someone within that same thread mentioned they use baking soda kind of in place of vinegar. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I think specifically for moss on pavement.
So I was gonna say, that is one thing, like we don't generally talk about like moss like in like garden areas, but like we typically talk to people about using it on their roofs on their houses. And yeah, basically what it does is it kind of suffocates the moss. And you have to keep reapplying. I think it's a good solution, as long as you have the time and are willing to keep reapplying it, because it, it has like a definite like amount of time where it's, active. So yeah, totally a good idea. And probably even safer, I would say, than the vinegar. But yeah, definitely a good option.
Great. And then there was one question about best way to access small quantities of biocontrols like cinnabar moths for tansy ragwort. That's a pretty specific one. Not sure if you have experience with that.
So I'm not as familiar with Oregon in terms of like people that are I mean, I know of places that you can get from like Montana, like generally, like when I was working as a field biologist, we would order our bugs from a lab in Montana. I don't know exactly if there's anything in Oregon. But yeah, if you do a little bit of research online, just like put that in that specifically what pest you're looking to deal with. I'm sure you could get a whole list of different labs that are creating these bugs. So, but yeah, I think Montana is a really good source, and usually they're, I mean, depending on the species of plant you're trying to get rid of, yeah, I think that would be a good option. And you can always reach out to me again, and I can help you look for that. Like I kind of have dual hats at NCAP, so I'm not just a program manager; I'm also a staff scientist. So I have some time to look into some of these things. So feel free to reach out to me, and I can help you.
Mm-hmm. Great. I know I feel like there's so much information out there that people swear by, and then others are like, no, that's never worked for me, or there might be a concern about it. So it can be hard to know where to get like information that both works and also is good for the environment or okay for the environment. So one person mentions using hot water steam on weeds and can even be effective with English ivy. So that's another one I've heard before, but haven't tried that one myself.
It makes sense. I mean, if you're using extremely hot water, we could break down, yeah, the cells within the plant.
Mhm.
I don't know, like I don't know how effective it gets as the plant gets bigger and more established, but I do think that yeah, it like makes sense to me biologically, but that would work for sure. So
Especially on the buds, if you like catch
yeah,
them in that more delicate state. Yeah.
exactly. That regrowth. Exactly.
Yeah, I think there's also a lot in my mind. This is kind of a side note, but there's also a lot of things that get characterized as weeds, like dandelions, and I can understand why, especially with dandelions. But there are also so many benefits to them. So sometimes having a conversation about like what what will this person kind of what can they be at peace with in their yard, so it's not always this like constant battle of like this needs to come out, this needs to come out, but instead kind of thinking of it as a harmonious ecosystem that's kind of building on its own, and maybe only the things that are causing the most problems really need to be focused on. But easier said than
That's sad
done.
that
I know we have a strong culture that's like got really specific criteria in mind. So it's easier said than done, I know, in practice.
yeah, and I mean there's definitely like two schools of thoughts. Like some people are like, oh, like it's too much, right? Like they're ugly, like I don't want them. And the other school is like, oh, well, they're good for many insects as food sources, or So yeah, there's it's difficult.
Depends on the perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, especially folks that are, maybe like I think of my grandmother, right? And she'd be like, no, like just remove them, because like it doesn't makes my lawn look bad, right? But yeah, I
Right.
get at the same time, they're also really important. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also kind of to one person's point, it's like we can't start creating that culture shift unless we start having those conversations. So even if you're working with someone and you're like, I don't know if this person's going to go for this, but I'm just going to give a little plug, see where it goes, and start the conversation. Sometimes they might take it and think about it more than you might initially think at first. I've definitely had conversations with people who've like pushed back at first, and then they'll come around a year later and be like, you know what? You said that thing, and now it makes total sense. I've been thinking about it all year. So you never really know how what you're sharing is gonna is how it can play out in the world, and hopefully eventually like shift that culture we have of like good plant, bad plant, must kill. So
Yeah, that makes me think of I was living on a farm in southern Washington for like 4 years, and the guy that was treating our like taking care of our land, he was using Roundup on the blackberries, and I was like, no, 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 I just kept like talking in his ear and like telling him why. And eventually he came around and he was like, we want to go full organic and like start, growing, wheat and all these different grains. And like, I want your help. So like, I think, yeah, like that's generally like something that we encounter all the time is like we have people that are really resistant to not using pesticides anymore. And they're like, well, what's the other option, right? Like, I don't have a lot of time, I don't have a lot of money, right? And like all these things seem very expensive, but in the end, it's like it all kind of pays off. And yes, I understand. And like we're not here as like the police to like slap you on the hand and fine you. It's like we want to find solutions that we can work on together to try to, help people. And yes, I am a tree hugging hippie and I generally want to do right by the environment. So yeah, I think making those plugs into people's ear, and just doing it as much as I can, like eventually it starts to like, get some momentum. So it's cool.
yeah. Yeah, love it. Well, thank you both so much. I don't know if you're able to stick around or not. There are a few more questions in the chat, but if you're not able to stick around today, I can always send them to you afterwards and we can try to get them answered, any input you might have on them. But just want to really reiterate my appreciation for you joining us today and helping us create a flyer to try to recruit our Spanish speaking community as well. And so I just really appreciate the new collaboration that we've been kind of kicking off here lately. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was
Thank you,
great to be
guys.
here.
Thanks, Susie. Thanks, JP. And sorry we couldn't get to all the questions in the chat. They're all very interesting. And feel free to contact us, like we said, if you have more questions.
And so our other presenter is Francis. Francis, I originally booked you for 11:15. What are your thoughts on if we took a quick break until 11:25 and had you share then? Would that work okay? Or would you prefer to
Absolutely.
share?
No,
That would be
everybody take a
okay?
break. That's fine with me.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Great.
Of
Okay.
course.
Well, then let's take a break and come back together at 11:25. We
Okay.
will see you all then. Thank you, Francis.
You got it.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Let's see, heading into the last 30 minutes or so of our presentations today. Thank you, JP, for forwarding. Time for a few words from Francis Gilliland, who is with Pollution Prevention Resource Center. They manage, I think, is what you'd call it, eco-biz. And so that's what Francis is going to share with us today, is going to talk about today. Francis, would you like to share a little bit about yourself? I've got the bio on your website, but I'm also happy to have you just like share whatever feels most relevant if you'd like to.
Sure, I'll share a little bit. I look way better in that picture than I do today, so thank you for using that one. I'm Frances Gilliland. I'm the Associate Director for the Pollution Prevention Resource Center. We are based in what EPA Region 10, so Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and Alaska. And I manage the projects that we currently work on in the state of Oregon, including EcoBiz. EcoBiz is our business certification program. So I'll be telling you a little bit about that. But my background is in I kind of feel like I've had 3 careers. My first career was in air quality in California. My second career, and working with small businesses as part of that. And second part of my career is running the Green Business Program in Santa Barbara County, California. And now I'm up in the beautiful Pacific Northwest working in Oregon and getting to see my son and daughter-in-law who live up there and helping with PPRC's projects, including EcoBiz, and getting to work with a lot of great Oregon businesses. So I look forward to telling you a little bit very quickly about EcoBiz and then answering any of your questions.
Awesome. Thank you. And feel free to jump right in. I think I need to make you, are you able to share if you
Let's
have any
see.
slides?
I do have some slides. Let's see if it will let me share. This says this will stop other screen sharing. Do you want to continue? Yes, I imagine that's the right answer.
That works.
And let's see if this works. Share. And then you guys can tell me what you see.
Great.
Do you see my presentation? Oh, it looks like you do.
Yes. Yep.
Yay.
Sure do.
How about that? It's always exciting when it
Technology
works.
win. You never know.
Now let's see if I can get it to start from the beginning. Ta-da. Okay. So hopefully you see my first slide here. That's just my contact information. EcoBiz stands for eco-friendly businesses. Kind of clever. EcoBiz has been around for over 20 years in the state of Oregon. This is kind of just a quick overview of what we do. And Susie, you stop me if I'm going too long, and feel free to answer any questions or ask any questions along the way as well. It's a free voluntary program, just like backyard habitat certification is. We're funded by local agencies, so a lot of local jurisdictions, cities, counties, water groups, Oregon DEQ. We also have some funding from the EPA. Right now, we work with 2 basic industries: auto repair and body shops and car washes, dealerships, landscapers. That's where we are working to coordinate with Backyard Habitat, and public agencies, so like city and county fleets. We're backed by DEQ, so Oregon DEQ and the local water authorities, and they work with us when we go out to work with businesses to make sure everybody's in compliance and meeting all the requirements that we have. And then we have the Oregon Pollution Prevention Outreach team. That's what P2O stands for, Pollution Prevention Outreach. And it's a statewide working group of P2 experts, and they help inform the kind of requirements and measures that we include in our certification program. So this is just a quick overview of the certification process. We do a site visit. We come out, we have a checklist that we go over with you, and we come out and walk around. So for landscapers, if you have offices or places where you store your supplies and equipment, we would meet you there. We also ask to go out to a couple sites where you're working so we can see the kind of work you do. We ask you to adopt any recommendations we come up with during that visit based on our checklist and what you're already doing. And of course, we allow for things that you might be doing that we hadn't ever thought of. We are certainly not the experts. Our checklists change all the time based on what we learn from you out in the field. And then we do a final certification visit, which would involve PPRC and either Oregon DEQ and a local water authority, just to make sure we have they're okay when we certify you. But again, it's not regulatory. It's not anything that's required. Excuse me. They're just like our second set of eyes to make sure that we haven't missed anything. And for landscapers, here's our checklist of categories that we work with or look at, sorry. We make sure you have any licenses and insurance that you're required to do. That's something we've been talking about, and you might have some input on that. About whether or not we should even be looking at that. So anyway, we can talk about that. Employee training, general landscape practices, design, pesticide use. That's where we overlap a lot with NCAP. We consider them partners as well. Irrigation, ponds and water features, turf, excuse me, your hardscapes on your landscape designs, lighting, office and materials handling, and your vehicles and equipment. One of the things that the state of Oregon wants us to be helping businesses with is going to electric equipment as well, and getting away from gas-powered equipment. This is a very short and abbreviated presentation, so I don't take up too much of your time. But I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the resources that we have on our website. We had EPA funding to develop a whole series of videos similar to what the folks at NCAP had done, and we were coordinating with them, so we weren't, covering the same topics. But we have a whole series of videos for the automotive type businesses that we work with, and a whole series of videos for landscape businesses that we work with. We post them up on YouTube, and they are all in English and in Spanish. So all of our videos are also in Spanish with spoken voice, some with subtitles, but almost all with spoken voice, so that the English and the Spanish are exactly the same. So I encourage you to check those out. We're just now working and getting all of our landscaping videos complete and done. And then just to tell you a little bit about why gaining certification. We are learning a lot from Backyard Habitat. Backyard Habitat, I'm so jealous of the name recognition that you have. And I know that I see your signs on landscapes and lawns across the Portland area. And whenever I see one of your signs, I become very curious about what they're doing and what it looks like. And it's just a really great program. So we have the same sort of thing. We have signs that businesses can use. You get to use our logo. You're listed on our website. Hopefully, we help you save money by reducing the amount of pollution that you have to deal with and being more efficient in your practices. And you become part of this network of businesses that are doing the right thing. We also list you on our website, so you can just see a couple. You probably know these folks that are there. That's just a couple of the landscapers we've worked with. I think I saw somebody in the chat earlier mention Symbiop as having a neat tool to get rid of blackberries and other things. Symbiop is also one of our certified eco-biz businesses. And it's our job to get the word out to the public about the great things that you're doing. So we list you on our website, on our social media. We have newsletters that go out in any way that we can spread the word and hopefully send business your way. Again, this is a lot of these things that are on our checklist are things that you're already doing. The goal is to help you go above and beyond and see if there's any ways that we can help you improve a little bit, help you reduce. We're very water quality focused, so help you reduce your impacts on water quality, use less pesticides. That's where, working with NCAP and those experts come in, and design beautiful landscapes that are good for the environment. So again, that was a really quick walkthrough of our program. We're looking forward to working in the future with Backyard Habitat, and we've been talking about kind of cross-referencing everybody on our websites so that if you're backyard habitat certified and you're on our website, people would see that you have both. Perhaps if you're backyard habitat certified, you get to skip a section of our checklist because we know you've already met their certifications and requirements, and vice versa. We're working on spreading this program statewide. Right now, most of our work is kind of in the general Portland metro area. And I think that's pretty much it, unless, Susie, you think I left anything out? Again, I wanted
I
to keep
don't,
it short. I know you've got a lot to cover in your training today.
that's perfect, Francis. Yeah, I love that you covered kind of what would benefit a business for signing up to be on EcoBiz and going through that process, and also um, kind of what that looks like to go through that process. So I think that's perfect. We have time for one or two questions for Francis if anyone has
I'm
one,
gonna stop sharing.
has any.
You know, there were some really great questions. I was watching the chat during Shay's presentation,
Yeah.
and I understand that blackberries are a weed and a pest, but they sure are fun to pick and eat when you're walking around. You see them out there.
They really are. And I see lots of critters, as Tommy would say, taking advantage of them,
Uh-huh.
enjoying them, enjoying them. Great. Well, Francis, we'll let you know. We'll share out your contact information for
Thank you.
anyone who saw this and is interested and might have questions or might be interested in joining EcoBiz. Oh, there is one question.
Oh, yeah, pest
Would
control.
yeah.
That is a really good question. Why don't you, let's see, my name was on the slide there, but here, I'll put my email in here for you and reach out to me and we can talk about that, because if it's not through our program, I bet we can find one that's similar. And one of the things that we want to do with EcoBiz is extend into different industries. When we were first formed, it was landscapers and automotive businesses were determined to be two of the industry types that we could work with and have the greatest impact, both in helping businesses be more efficient and save money and impact to the environment. But as we go forward, we want to change that. And when I worked in California, we did work with certifying pesticide, or not sorry, pest control businesses. So that's something we can definitely talk about. Thank you.
Great.
And that's
And
a really
there's,
great question. I'm sorry. I know you've
yeah,
got
that's
other
okay. Go
things to
ahead.
get to. Would you ever consider promoting hand tools rather than jump? Yeah, absolutely. We would, for sure. See, and this is why it's important for us to talk to you. You know, we hear from certain funders what they want us to do, but that's not always all of the information and the best way to do things. So I love that idea of promoting um, hand
The
tools.
hand
That's a
tools.
really
Yeah.
great idea. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Francis. I also want to give a big shout out to Francis for being lead on an application that we were part of with Francis's team, with the NCAP team that we're hopefully going to hear about this month that would really help us carry out some great work next year. And Francis pulled a big load on that one. So thank you, Francis, for all your work
Thank
on
you for
that.
all your help. Fingers crossed,
Yeah.
everybody send like good, I always do this, good juju or whatever out into the universe. And hopefully EPA wants to give us some money here in the next few weeks. So, thank
We need
you.
all the help we can get to
Yeah, no
get through
kidding.
2025. So thank you, Francis.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a
Okay.
great one.
JP, I think we're ready to resume our backyard habitat slides now. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, so to kind of wrap up with like next steps for being in the backyard habitat directory. And again, this is kind of mostly, I think, for the new folks, because those of you who have been in the directory before kind of know the ropes here. And this is nothing's changed in terms of like how we're like the steps that are needed to get into the directory. So we do have our agreement. So we call it the practitioner agreement. And I think JP, there might be some bullets there. Perfect. Okay. So some of the agreement highlights, and please do reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns about meeting these like requirements, I guess we'll call them. One is that the practitioner has their own independent business that's licensed and certified, and whatever is required to kind of be licensed and certified with the state or states that you work in. And then your compliance with local laws, etc. And see, I think there might be a couple more things there. Sorry, JP, can you go back to the last one?
Well, it only goes forward, so hold on a second. Let me go back a few slides
I don't know
down the
why
road.
it's giving us so many problems this year. But we do have that agreement, so that's something that you'll be getting to JP, and JP will be working with you on. There is also the form that you fill out if you were in the directory this last year, just kind of letting us know how many of our backyard habitat participants you worked with, if you know of any, and kind of how much income was generated for your business through those customers. And that really helps us gauge the impact that we're having on the local green economy. And it also helps us know how successful the directory is and if there are things that we should be considering to try to help it be more successful. Okay, yeah, so this is one important note for any businesses that have like multiple staff, is that it's going to be really, really helpful if you have staff who are going out, especially in that first meeting with a customer. If it's the first meeting with a customer and they've indicated that they're in backyard habitat, which can be helpful to ask kind of upfront. We do have about 14,000 folks in the program now, so quite a few folks out there. But it's really helpful if you send someone from your business who's been to this training to be the one to go out and meet with them and work with them. That way, the person who's been through this training process, especially that training from 2020 that JP emailed a link to, that gives the full breakdown of the program. That's really helpful to know, because then you'll be on the same page with that customer as you're working with them, because they're very likely going to be interested in getting certified with backyard habitat. So then they'll be on the same page. Okay, JP, let's see if it'll cooperate and get us the next one. Okay. And then in the agreement, we do ask that the businesses that you all carry out work with our backyard habitat participant in a way that's going to help them get certified. So this would mean not planting any of the plants that are on our noxious weed list. You can find that on our website, and the backyard habitat participant, if they've already had a site visit with us, will have a written site report that would list those out. We check boxes indicating like which of the plants are on that particular property. Also avoid using herbicides on their properties. There are some exceptions to this. Of course, if there's a plant on our list that you're trying to remove and you need to do some like really tiny spot treatments or such, we understand that sometimes that's necessary, but as a kind of a general rule, trying to limit herbicide and pesticide use as much as possible. And then also, as much as possible, planting native plants. If you're working on their landscape design or you're doing their landscape installation, planting plants that are on the Portland plant list, and avoiding or minimizing the use of cultivars. The way we talk about cultivars is that it's not that they're bad. They are probably providing lots of great benefits, but there aren't known We don't know how the changes that were made to the plant during the cultivation process are impacting the ability of wildlife to use them, whether it's a change of the bloom color or bloom time or bloom size. Any of those things could potentially be impacting wildlife, the wildlife that depend on them, their ability to kind of utilize that native plant or utilize that plant. Also minimizing light pollution and designing lighting for bird health. So this is for those of you who help install or help design for the installation of lighting. And also following guidelines for best times to prune or remove shrubs and trees based on bird nesting seasons. This is something we've been trying to share more information about. So this would essentially kind of to give a brief recap, and Ryan Gilpin, who is actually in this group, gave us a great presentation a couple of years ago on this very topic. But essentially this is like checking shrubs, trees, any area where you're going to be like removing plants or doing a lot of pruning, just checking beforehand to see if there are any nesting wildlife in there before you kind of jump in and start really changing up the area. So these are things that we're asking kind of you all to do as part of your agreement and partnership with us. And we will be uploading the recording of this meeting to actually to our YouTube page. That was a typo. We're going to be uploading it to our YouTube page so it can live there permanently, and we will share out a link for that. You are, by being in our directory, you're welcome to share or to use our Backyard Habitat logo on your website, your materials. I know several of you or many of you will put kind of the logos of some of the groups that you're partnering with or where you've gone through trainings or so forth on your outreach materials. So feel free to utilize our Backyard Habitat logo that way. You can find them on the directory resource page. Oh, that's what the resource page meant up above, was the directory resource page. So that's the page that JP links everybody to for filling out the agreement and so forth. And then we're also happy to send you flyers, Backyard Habitat flyers. So if you want to have a handful of flyers so that you can give them to customers you're working with who may not be in the program, we definitely recommend that. So, all right. And I think that might be all for that one, JP.
Let me just add a little bit. For new folks, please email us and let us know that you would like to have some of the flyers. But for people who have been in our directory, you can request those flyers through the revenue form. There's a question there once you fill out that form that would ask if you wanted to have some flyers. So email us if you're new, or if you're returning, just use the revenue form.
Perfect. Okay. And last but not least, we would love your feedback on whether this training was helpful. If you have any suggestions for future trainings, any speaker or topic ideas, please email us. Again, JP will be your point person for forms, technical assistance, etc. And he will also be your contact and emailing you next steps after this meeting. And then again in January, once the updated directory goes live. And next slide. And that wraps up the presentation. We wanted to leave some time for kind of general question and answers. I know you all are out there all day, every day working in the field, and probably lots of questions come up. So I haven't been able to keep up with the chat line here recently. I would say feel free to just unmute at this point and speak up if you have a question, and we'll try to answer as many of those as we can. I do see one question that's kind of there at the end, so it's easy for me to see about whether Backyard Habitat made a policy decision on the use of arbormectin to prevent emerald ash borer. Where we're currently at in terms of treatments for emerald ash borers, whether whether it's preventative, which is basically all you can use for emerald ash borer, but is that is kind of a unique situation that's more of a decision between the person who's taking care of the tree, as in like the homeowner or the participant that lives there, and the arborist, and that we will. Yes, we don't have any specific policies that say that you can't be using that in order to reach one of our levels of certification.
Yeah, but Susie, can I add to that for a second?
Sure.
So the contractor agreement last year said that we were not allowed to recommend anything that was like a red pesticide, and emamectin benzoate is a red pesticide. So I was asking last year if we could find a way to broaden the language a little bit to allow us to do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that fell through the cracks. Let me circle back and make a clarification on the agreement, but I think this is kind of an exceptional use in my mind. Like our ash trees are critical to our habitats, and if we are able to preserve them by using arbormectin, then that kind of makes sense. I mean, it's not ideal, right? Because basically, because it's systemic, it's going to be impacting or could impact the beneficial insects on the tree. But at the same time, it's a complex situation that requires a little more thought than just a blanket yes or no, which makes it a little more difficult when it comes to like paperwork, like agreements. But seems like it's worth the effort. So
Absolutely. If there's anything I can do to help in getting that language right, just let me know.
thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. Yeah, I would say if you are an arborist or someone who's going to be recommending this, I think we would just ask that you do have that conversation with the participant and let them know that it could potentially have impacts on insects, because that is something that many people in the program really think about. And so this would, that in my mind is a decision for them to make in terms of what their priorities are. So I think that would be our ask, is just like make sure to communicate that so that they know that that there could be some potential impacts.
Kind of along the same lines, I was wondering, is there any policies about treating for birch borers as well? Because
yeah, I think, to be honest, I know less about that one. We've spent a couple years learning quite a bit about emerald ash borer since it's made the news, and we have some programming with Central Cultural in Washington County around emerald ash borer. So we've been doing a deeper dive on that one compared with the bronze birch borer. But I think that's something that we should talk about. This isn't like my specific decision to make, but I would say it's probably likely going to fall into the same category of answer, where it's something kind of to be decided between the two, because we also care about our birch trees. But yeah, it is tricky, isn't it? Thank you, Erica, for that one. I'm going to write that one too.
Susie, can you speak to where I've seen in the chat that there's a pause on certifications or site visits in certain areas. Can you
Yes.
speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So starting on October 1st, we had to make the very difficult decision to pause our work in Portland east of the Willamette River. So that's like from the river to the edge of Portland. And we are still doing certifications. So one clarification is we're still doing certifications there, we're still taking enrollments in that area, but the folks who are enrolling are going onto a wait list instead of being seen right away. And the reason for that has to do with some very complex funding situations that we're in. A really brief explanation around that is that we have 24 different grants and contracts, and each of those grants and contracts cover very specific areas like the city of Tiger, the city of Camas, the city of Wilsonville, etc. And we have struggled for a few years finding the funding that we need to carry out the program in that specific part of Portland. And it's really unfortunate because that is the hottest part of our region. It's the part that has the fewest trees per person. So it was a very difficult decision to make, but it just comes down to that being a very large area that we aren't getting nearly the amount of funding that we need. So what we're doing right now is talking to a lot of agencies. We're applying for grants. The EPA grant that you heard Francis and I talking about would specifically cover that area and some other areas as well. But so we are doing everything we can to try to get that area back up and running for site visits. It's looking like we have had a little bit of funding trickle in that may allow us to do like a quiet launch in that area where we'd be working off the wait list, but wouldn't be making a public announcement about it likely. And so I would say as you're working with folks in that area, do encourage them to sign up on our wait list, because when we do roll back out, and it's just a matter of time. So when we do roll back out, they're going to be earlier on the list. They're going to be at the top of the list versus having to wait longer if they wait until we make the public announcement.
Susie, does the wait on the east side also include like Milwaukee and Oregon City?
It doesn't. Those are outside of the city of Portland. So anything outside of the city of Portland is not impacted by this. We're working as usual. So Gresham, Troutdale, Fairview, all normal. We're working as normal. Same for Clark County, same for Clackamas County, and same for Washington County. So, 3/4 or 4/5 of our program is still functioning as normal. So yeah, thank you for clarifying. Great. Okay. Well, thank you all so much for being here. A few last notes is just that we're gonna probably take a look at the chat line and see what information is in there that would be helpful to share with the group. And we'll let you know where you can find this recording in the future. And JP will be working with you to make sure all of the T's are crossed to get you added or back on the directory for 2025. And I think that might be everything. Might be time for lunch, huh? It was really good to see everyone. Thank you all so much. We are hoping at some point to have something in person for those of you who want to like socialize. If you have strong feedback or thoughts or desires, please let us know, because the more we hear from you, the easier it will be for us to prioritize how to spend our time with the directory next year. So thank you all for being part of our community. I think that's everything. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Susie, and everyone else.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Thank you.